Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and this is the Breaking Free Show. And I'm so happy that you're here today. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. It's a really wonderful time of year just to connect and be together and just rejoice. So I am so happy and honored that you're here. And we're going to get the show on the road in just a second, but I just want to say hi to Amnan.
Hello, Marilyn. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I am just fine, thank you.
Good. You have a good weekend?
Had a great weekend.
Yeah, good. Good.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a good weekend too. I'm looking for some other good weekends coming up. So, we have a really exciting show in store. I've been looking forward to this guest for several months now, and I am delighted to bring him to you today. But I want to remind everyone that you can enter into our chat and ask questions, comment, whatever you like in there. Just put your name under our video, and you can put your nickname, I don't care, whatever it is, under your video, under my video, and we'll talk to you from there. We also have a phone number if you want to call right into the studio and ask a question, 919-518-9773, or you can join us on Skype, and that is computers, that's plural, then the number 2K voice, and you will come in on Skype voice, not video. So don't worry about how you look. We just want you here any way we can get you. So today's show is going to be really stupendous. And before the show was getting started, I'm thinking, I'm just going to tell you, don't even write anything down. Just listen. But if you have to write it down, go ahead, because you're going to want to really hear what our guest has to say. Because so much of this information that we're going to bring you today is going to be such common sense that you're going to go, oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. So here's Kelvin Chin. Welcome, Kelvin.
Hey, Marilyn. Great to see you. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. Welcome.
To be here.
So Kelvin is an expert in meditation, past lives, and just so many things. And he's very wise. And the last couple of weeks, months that I've gotten to know Kelvin, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you can learn in no time just listening to him. So Kelvin, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Yeah,
good.
It's great to be here.
It's good to have you. So tell us more about Kelvin.
Well, I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, born there, raised in suburbia. Learned to meditate in my teens, my late teens, and started really opening up when I learned meditation. And it was a different kind of meditation from what's most was out there. It was a very easy technique, opened me up a lot. I learned how to teach it. It was transcendental meditation. I studied personally with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi for a number of years. I was an international leader in that organization for about 10 years. So it's a great technique. I taught it for about 10 years, as I said, and then I moved away from the organization. They went into different directions, etc. And I've since removed the cultural trappings from the teaching and have made it even easier. But the technique of meditation in that way, that easy, effortless way, really opened me up. And I had an NDE, which we can talk about, when I was 20 years old. And then my past life memories started opening up in my mid-20s. I started communicating spontaneously with the other side in the mid-1980s. And all of this has continued to the present. So my memories go back 6,000 years now, and we can dive into any aspect of this.
Well, I want to talk about it all. So first of all, so explain just, so when you say TM, so transcendental meditation, right? That's what you mentioned? Okay. Yes. So just give a little explanation of that for our audience who may not know.
So even though I don't teach TM anymore, I speak very highly of it, and I give credit to Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He's the one people who if they don't know who he was the Indian guru who came out in the 1950s and in 1967 taught the Beatles to meditate. So the Beatles studied with him in India. I know people who were there with the Beatles and Maharishi and so forth on that India course. So he's that guru. He brought it to the West. But he was a spiritual revolutionary in the following way. So I give Maharishi credit for this, that he changed the view the thinking, the perspective, the approach towards teaching, learning, and practicing meditation. Because most of the time, people, oh, we got to focus on this, got to concentrate on this, got to clear the mind, got to quiet your mind. That's what most people who come to me think. And I say, no, you don't. You don't. It can be much easier. And I give Maharishi credit for making that turn, making that perception and that approach different. And I've made it even easier, as I said, and I've taken the cultural and lifestyle trappings and so forth out of the teaching. But that approach opens the mind up more readily, more quickly, and I would argue more effectively. Now, yes, meditation is a way to reduce our stress and anxiety and so forth. And a lot of my clients come to me with panic attacks, anxiety, depression, and so forth issues, and they melt away eventually. But I teach a lot of people who just want to expand their spiritual experience, their conscious capacity for spiritual experience, and this opens them up in that way too. And it opened me up. So I'll tell you this. Let me jump to the NDE real quick because it segues from the meditation, right, that we're talking about. I had an NDE, a near-death experience. That's what that stands for, NDE. When I was 20 years old, I was swimming off of in San Diego, off of La Jolla there, near UCSD, where I was going to summer school. And I got pulled up by a rip current. And in a matter of probably 30, 40 seconds, I was about 2 miles out. And I know that because the cliffs are 300 feet high and they were about 3 or 4 inches tall. And so I asked a friend of mine how far I was out. And he told me. He did the math. I almost drowned. I was going down like in the movies, you see people going underwater. And I don't know, maybe I was 2 or 3 feet underwater at that point because I was so exhausted trying to swim back in against the current. And I left my body. I was out of my body, but I decided when I was out of my body, I said, no, I can will myself, I can do this. And I willed myself back in, and I said, just take your time, don't rush to swim back in. And I took my time. It took me an hour to swim back in. There was a friend of mine, she was on the shore and she basically, was keeping an eye on me. So she said it took about an hour for me to swim back in. My point is that the meditation, for many people, the NDE is their first experience with kind of opening up. For me, I had already been meditating for several years. So I was already very opened up, and I think that's what saved my life. Because I was opened up, I had the perspective to go back into my body and make the choice to relax and go back in.
So I want to go back to something for just a second before we go forward. Just so those of you that are listening, we have lots of different people who listen who have lots of experience doing certain things, maybe have no experience and are just listening for the first time. One thing I want Kelvin to clarify is this idea about meditation and getting it out of the doing of it. Because when you spend a lot of time telling yourself it should be this and it shouldn't be that, and you shouldn't be thinking here, and you have to calm yourself down, then you're missing the message, because the message can come across as a ticker tape. But if you're constantly telling your mind to stop, you don't know what you're stopping, whether it's the message or the chatter. So you just let it go, because within that, you're going to find whatever message or the calmness or whatever it is. Kelvin, is that?
There's a fundamental principle. Here's the fundamental principle of every human mind, whether you meditate, you don't meditate, everybody's human mind follows this fundamental principle. And that's that trying always creates more activity in the conscious area of the mind, in the localized conscious area of the mind. Trying, effort, control, those are all synonyms. Always creates more activity. It doesn't create less activity. It's like if I told you, do not think of the word hippopotamus. You've already thought it. You can't not think it. So it's like trying not to try is always more effort, always creates more activity. So the whole notion, I've thought about this. I've been teaching meditation now for 47 years. So I've thought about this for a long time. And I thought, well, why are so many meditation techniques like that out there, where they are controlled? They are, quiet your mind. Try to quiet your mind. Try to change your thoughts this way or that way. Why is it that way? Why are there so many meditation techniques? And I've distilled it down to this one thing. I think that somewhere millennia ago, somebody took a description of the goal. Oh, I want to be quiet. And they made it a means for the path. They made it the path, right? Mm-hmm. They took the description, they went to the guru and they said, oh, great guru so-and-so sitting in the cave in the Himalayas for the last 30 years meditating. What's it like? He said, well, I close my eyes and I just feel this connection with all living things. And it's this incredible expansion and my mind is full of light. And then the seeker goes back to Los Angeles, sits in his or her apartment and tries to make that happen over and over and over again. And finally, their mind gets so exhausted, their mind actually does settle down and experience that. And they go, boom, see, I'm glad I didn't stop after 10 years. On the 15th year, it actually happened. And then they open up a school, and the school is all about trying and effort. And the harder you try, the longer you try, finally it will work. Mm-hmm. It's basically another way of saying the same thing. It's taking waking state metrics, waking state rules, and applying it to meditation. And that doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. It's like if I'm walking through the door over there, waking state metrics tell me, Kelvin, you need to focus, you need to pay attention. Where's the doorknob? Where's the door jamb? Don't hit your shoulder in the door jamb. I got to walk through the door, right? And just, we generally unconsciously, but subconsciously, we're paying attention. There's a focusing of the mind that needs to be there, especially if I'm carrying a bunch of boxes going through the door, okay? Well, that's waking state metrics. We should not apply waking state metrics and rules, focusing, control, etc. in meditation. It's important when you're driving through an intersection because you're going to get in a car accident if you don't focus, but not in meditation. It's the same thing analogously, I say, why would you apply dream state rules in waking state? You don't. In a dream, if you're driving a car, the car can turn into a flower pot or a horse or something. In waking state, the dream rules don't apply. Right? Your car is a car in waking state. It's not going to change into a flower pot. So you better pay attention. In dream state, it's a different set of rules. Right. Same thing in meditation and waking state, different set of rules. So the way I teach it, I apply meditation rules in the teaching. And that's why it makes it so easy.
Okay, so now connect, and that makes perfect sense. So, because I know sometimes people, are scared to try it. There's too many things, they can't get quiet. If you stop trying to do all those things, and you allow yourself just to be, it'll happen. So,
well,
okay,
maybe.
Maybe.
So yeah. It depends on the person. Okay. Is it possible for somebody to have the experience in meditation just by practicing the way you just described? It is possible because the state of meditation, the meditative state, is a natural state that every human being has within them. However, we as a human culture have done an incredibly good job at covering up our ability to do that. So that's why I teach a step-by-step technique that people learn, and it helps them get from point A to point B. Because you just described point B. Okay. The issue is, how do you get from point A to point B? Because most people's minds are going,
okay. So that's what I'm going to ask you now. Is that, yeah. Okay, so point A, or maybe before you get to point A, what is so important about meditating?
Well, I think what's important is meditating. I distill it down to this one sentence: is if waking, we go through a cycle of waking, dreaming, and sleeping. Waking, dreaming, and sleeping. Every human being does, right? So if sleeping and dreaming were enough to get rid of our stresses so that our mind could really be relaxed and free and expanded, then nobody would be stressed out on the planet, but we know that everybody is. So that tells us that that dreaming and sleeping aren't enough to get rid of what we accumulate in waking. And so that's why meditation is the missing link. It's so critically important because, look, I was a test subject in the very first medical studies done in the United States in 1971 in Boston, Massachusetts, and they were published. The results were published in Journal American Medical Association, JAMA, Lancet in the UK. It was a cover story in Scientific American magazine in February 1972. I was in those experiments. One of the things they did, they took blood samples from people. And my friend Mitch was on the cover of Scientific American magazine with a picture of him with a catheter coming out of his arm. And they were taking blood samples. Cortisol levels plummet. Or lactic acid levels plummet. All these different 40 to 60 hormones and chemicals that kick in when the fight or flight response happens get balanced, get reduced, because what the technique is doing is turning on the opposite of the fight or flight. So it's real stuff. But the issue is, how do you turn that on in a way that's not controlling? That's the thing.
Right.
Right? It's got to be easy.
It's got to be easy.
Think about it.
Yeah, it's got to be easy.
It's got to be easy, because here's another logical thing to think about. Everybody knows that the fight or flight switch is an automatic switch. You don't decide to turn on the fight. I got to turn on my fight or flight. No, your heart races, your adrenaline pumps when you're in the middle of the intersection and a car runs a red light. Your fight or flight turns on, you run to the curb, save your life, right? This automatic switch. Well, there's an equally automatic switch. I call it the opposite of the fight or flight switch. The medical term for it is the parasympathetic nervous system. There's an automatic switch. Well, to turn on an automatic switch, does it make sense that to control your mind to turn on an automatic switch? No. It has to be as easy and as automatic as possible, the technique to turn on an automatic switch. That's what's going to turn on an automatic switch as quickly as possible and effectively as possible. That's why what I teach works so fast, because it's so easy. It's so as automatic as possible. There is a step-by-step technique. But to your point, Marilyn, does it eventually become automatic after people have been doing my technique for a while? Yeah. Eventually, they just close their eyes and they're in that mode that you described. They're being.
So now talk to us about the beyond, because you're this light, you have such a handle, such an understanding of what that is.
Yeah.
And a lot of the fear, that people experience in life is about death. So if we have a better understanding about death, we'll live more fully. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So go ahead, tell us about that.
Yeah. And this is actually, from a historical standpoint, what Jesus, what a big part of his message that has completely been lost is overcoming the fear of death, and his resurrection and so forth, and how he came back, etc. For those of you who know that story, is part of this. It was his intent, his objective, to show that the mind, body, spirit, consciousness, those are all synonyms for the same thing as far as I'm concerned. Soul, so etc. Those are all synonyms. I use the word mind because I like to make my work and my teaching more culturally neutral, culturally and religiously neutral, because I work with people from 30 different countries so far, all cultures, all religions, atheists, agnostics, doesn't matter. So I use the word mind. So our mind continues after we die, has been my experience. I've had a lot of experience, not just with my NDE, but with just being on the other side. And I have the facility now just to be on the other side or on this side.
So you say that you can choose which side you want to be on?
Well, okay. You could say I travel, but it's not really traveling, because the there is really here. It's just that we can't see it. It's a different frequency, let's say. So I have communications with many people on the other side fairly regularly. I don't call myself a psychic in that way, so people may think, oh, is he a psychic? But I guess I am in that way, but I don't do sessions with people typically, because I like to help empower people to do it themselves. Because to me, it's a normal, natural human ability. All of this, the communication with the other side, the experience in the other side, and it's about breaking down our own internal barriers. Now, the barriers can be neurophysiologic, can be cortisol, could be lactic acid, could be hormonal, could be brain chemistry. and very often they can be emotionally based, and we can get into that in terms of what I mean by emotional patterns that can block us and so forth from communication or experience the other side. But in a nutshell, to answer your question, I would say the other side is not as different from this side as we think. And we can go into what I mean by that.
I love this part. Go ahead.
Yeah, you want me to go?
Okay. Go. I don't.
Okay.
And I give you permission to
Yeah.
go even someplace before me that I don't know we're going.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Because I'm sure you've been there before.
Yeah. So you can feel free to interrupt me.
Okay, I will.
Give that permission too.
Okay,
if you
thank
want
you. Thank you very much. And hold on, if anybody else wants to interrupt us, feel free. Call in 919-518-9773 or computers, that's plural, then the number 2K voice on Skype. So feel free to interrupt. This is an open conversation. And the more you interrupt, the more I interrupt, the more Kelvin interrupts, the more exciting it is. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
I
cool.
am a needs-based person. So if people could call in and ask questions, I am here to meet people's needs.
Right.
That
Yes,
I'm all about that.
absolutely.
So here's the thing. Here's what I meant by when I say there's less difference between this side and the other side than people realize. Obviously, there's difference. So let's just point out the obvious difference, and then I'll talk about what I meant when I say there's less difference. There's obvious difference between this side and the other side. Some of the obvious differences are that it's less physical. It's not completely non-physical, although sometimes you'll hear me use in my lectures that it's the non-physical and this is physical. But it's a kind of figuratively speaking. We don't have physical bodies on the other side, but we have what I call an identifiable energy pattern. In other words, I can still recognize you, Marilyn, after we die, we physically die, and we're on the other side. I can still recognize you. Now, you might show me, for example, your Marilyn Shannon face on the other side. So, oh, that's Marilyn's. That's right. I thought I recognized her energy pattern. And then you might show me face, but then you don't have to show me anymore. So I've had many experiences like that with a number of old friends, we'll just call them, loved ones and old friends who've come to me on this side when I'm on this side, and they show me their face that I recognize. So Maharishi, for example, I know he died in 2008. I was with him for 10 years in the 1970s when he was in his 50s. He died when he was in his 90s. Okay, I wasn't with him or his organization for about the last 30-something years of his life. Well, he comes to me and I see him in his 50s because that's when I knew him, right? Other people like that, for example, okay? You would show me how I see you now, probably, that kind of thing. But then I don't have to see you anymore because I identify your energy pattern. I call it an identifiable energy pattern that we each have. So if you want to call that a sense, a glimmer of physicality, I think that would probably be accurate from a physics standpoint because it's an identifiable energy pattern. But it's not physical like this Kelvin Chin body, like flesh and pumping fluids and all of that. So we know that that's that.
All right, I have to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so when you have been on the other side, how long do you stay, and what is bringing you there? Is it a dream? Is it the meditation? Is it in just a moment? I mean, and then how long do you stay there? And
it varies. It varies. Sometimes it's in my dreamings. I've been lucid dreaming. People know what lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is when you're in a dream. You can do things in the dream. You're not only consciously aware, but you can control things in the dream. You can say, "Okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to go down this road, or I'm going to do that. Or okay, let's change." So my dreaming is very similar to my waking state. Do I ever have what I call fantasy dreams? I call them fantasy dreams and lucid dreams. Do I ever have fantasy dreams sometimes? Absolutely, yes. And sometimes those fantasy dreams are really wacky, just like everybody else's wacky dreams that everybody else can have. I still have those. And I think a lot of that is often releasing of old emotional stuff, or maybe even fatigue from the day. If you're like excessively tired sometimes you'll have more fantasy dreams. Although I know people, and I've had this experience, and my daughter's had this experience with being physically and emotionally exhausted, and they had lucid experience. So it varies. Our chemistry, our body chemistry is so complex, you cannot predict. But yeah, sometimes dreams, sometimes in the shower, sometimes during my meditation, on the other side, and so forth. Sometimes for long periods of time. Time is the difference. So let's talk about this.
Yeah.
The experience of time is different. So when you say how long, well, kind of a short time, long time on this side will vary, but also on the other side. The other side, the experience of time is different. So this is a common point of conflation and confusion. You hear people say this all the time. They have an NDE, near-death experience, or they'll go on the other side and say, there's no time on the other side. It's timeless. There's no time. Well, that's actually a conflation, because there is still time, but the experience of time is so different from our experience of time here that, and I'll give you some examples, that we think, if you're not familiar with being in a more time warpy kind of state, we'll just call it, then you think, oh, there's no time here, it's timeless or whatever. But when you've been meditating like I had for 16, 17 years, when I first started having my experiences on the other side, I'd had such a huge a breadth and depth of experience with myself and with experiencing, let's just call it, very different, odd time experiences from what I would normally experience in waking state. I would have those for almost 20 years before I started having experience on the other side. It was no big deal for me. I'm experiencing the other side. It's like, oh, okay, this is like that. I'm familiar with that, but it's not a timeless state. So when you hear people say that, it's typically people who have not had a huge breadth and depth of experience with weird time experiences. I'll just call it that. Odd, non-waking state time experiences. That's what I mean by saying weird. So, for example, on the other side, your energy, you're an energy you're an energy form. You don't have a physical body like we do here. So what's the closest thing that we can describe on this side of energy? Light. Okay? Light is a form of energy. So when I see people and I see them on planet Earth, Kelvin Chin, and I see them come to me sometimes on the other side, they're like a light body. I can see their light body sometimes. Other times they just come to me telepathically. But I have seen light bodies, a quasi-physical form, a light body, okay? Well, if we're a light body on the other side, you could argue we could travel maybe as fast as the speed of light. How fast is the speed of light? The speed of light, look it up, Wikipedia. It's almost 700 million miles per hour, the speed of light. I'll say it again, 700 million miles per hour. So how fast is that? What does that mean? That means to get around planet Earth at the fattest part, the equator, the fattest part of planet Earth, you can get around at the speed of light 8 times. I'm trying to do 8 fingers. 8 times, 8 times around in 1 second. That means you can get around in 1/8 of a second planet Earth. That's really fast, okay? So this goes to the point where people will say, you can be in 2 places at the same time on the other side. I say, no, you can't. I say that the same rules of the universe function on the other side as they do on this side, but in a very different way. The same general principles, but that they function in a different way. That sounds like a little paradox, but it's not.
Well, we go so fast that you can't see the speed.
Exactly. So the example I give in my lectures is, let's say Kelvin dies. Kelvin's dead. He's on the other side. And he comes to visit his 2 children. I have 2 beautiful children. And one of my son's an actor. My daughter's a model. Let's say that Jesse's in Tokyo acting. And then Sammy is in, I don't know, London modeling, Okay, and so I visit my son in Tokyo, and in Earth time, I go over to my daughter, and they call each other up right away, and they say, "Well, it's like what? Dad just called me." No, Dad just called me. He must be in the same. He can be in the same place at the same time. That's crazy. No, if you're traveling 700 million miles per hour from Tokyo to London, how long does that take? If it takes 1/8 of a second to get around the Earth, that's what, a quarter of a second? I don't know, an eighth of a second, no, not a quarter. It's the other way. It's a 16th of a second. It's less. 16th to 30 seconds of a second.
So what does this tell us about the other side?
This is my point.
Okay.
There's the first point that I made. There's less difference between this side and the other side than we realize. I think we can apply similar principles. That's my experience anyway, to the other side than we realize. So so I think we can stop trying to figure out what I call K factors. You know what a K factor is in science? In science, they'll use a K factor or an L factor in different formulas. Physics does this, chemistry does this. When an experiment doesn't work out the way they think it should, it just does not work out. They'll throw in the K factor and all of a sudden it works out. That's a fake, that's faking it, okay? I don't think we need all these K factors thrown into some of the quantum mechanics theories in order to make it work. All right? So there you go.
All right. So what are we doing on the other side?
So on the other side, here's another point. We're not sitting in around like in the cartoons I used to watch in the 60s and 70s, sitting around on clouds playing harps all day, bored. All right? Now, is it possible for some people to make that choice on the other side to do that? Yeah. I mean, you can choose, basically, you can choose whatever you want. But a lot of people are doing a lot of different stuff on the other side. So I say this to my clients who've lost loved ones, children, parents, loved ones, friends. They may come to visit you, and then or they may not see you. They may not come to visit you for a long time. And keep in mind, your experience of time is different from their experience of time. So what is a long time for you may not feel like a long time for them. Okay, so you got that thing that's little. You got to keep that in mind. But also, they're off doing other stuff. I have a story in my book here. My book, Overcoming the Fear of Death, of a friend of mine who told me this story because he saw that I was writing. I mentioned on Facebook that I was writing a book, and he said, "Oh, Kel, I got a story for you." And I said, "John, you never told me this. I mean, we worked in the same law firm for several years. We carpooled a few times. We lived in the same town. He never told me this." So when he was 21 years old, I'll give you the short version. When he was 21-ish or something, his 18, 19-year-old brother died in a tragic car accident. He and his mom saw his brother that morning, and that was it. That was the last time they saw him alive. It was horrific tragedy, and of course the mother. You can imagine, though I'm working with a group now called Helping Parents Heal. So if any of you know anybody, just short digression here, if you know anybody who's lost a child, a child of theirs has died, connect them with this organization. It's called helpingparentsheal.org. It's a nonprofit. I'm in touch with Elizabeth, who's the founder, and so forth. Helpingparentsheal.org. Check it out. You should connect with them. Anyway, what happened was the mother is distraught here in this story, right? John's mother, and his brother is now dead. And he came to John, I'm not sure, I can't remember, a couple weeks later, whatever. Maybe it was a couple months later. Yeah, it was months later. That's right. That's the point of the story, is it was many months later. His brother came to him in a dream and told him he was fine. Sorry that it took him so long to get to him. John told him in the dream He had a lucid dream. John does not lucidly dream. He says the only lucid dream he's ever had his entire life was this dream. And so he told his brother in the dream that go see mom, tell mom, go visit mom. The next day, John got a call from his mom, and mom said that the brother had visited her and apologized for not coming sooner, but he tried to, but he was off on a mountain, climbing a mountain with his friends on the other side. So, who knows? And I've had my own visitation from somebody who I didn't know. 16 years it took him to visit his sister.
So and you've had, we've all many different experiences, and you have many memories.
Yes.
Right. So
yeah.
do you have a memory of climbing a mountain, and how are you dead climbing a mountain? What is that? Tell me.
Well, I have a theory.
What's your theory?
Know. My theory is that they could be climbing mountains on the other side, because I know for a fact from having been there that you can create whatever you want, basically. So you could create a mountain and just go climbing with your friends who you meet on the other side. And we are met with thousands of friends. You keep in mind, it's not just friends from this lifetime and your family from this lifetime. It's your family from other lifetimes who are not manifested in physical form on planet Earth right now, who are hanging out on the other side. So you have all these friends and family and so forth who greet you when you die on the other side. So you could be off climbing a mountain that you create, or you and your friends create on the other side. Or you could be climbing a mountain here. Maybe you're on a mountain here in California, in the Sierra Nevada somewhere. I'm in Los Angeles, so in Sierra Nevada somewhere, walking next to Marilyn, Shannon, and Kelvin Chin in the Santa Monica Mountains or something.
Right. So, so your memories of being on the other side, are they pretty deep?
My memories deep.
Or are they fleeting?
They're fleeting. And they're not like I don't go there and hang out. I'm fully here. Mm-hmm. I'm in the Kelvin Chin body. And here's another point. This is another teaching point. I am all about
living. You're all about living.
I'm about living. The be here now thing, right. It's like, I'm all about that. I'm about living in my physical body. I'm not about escaping out of my body. I don't meditate to escape. I meditate to connect with myself, my larger sense of self. I have this analogy that I borrow from a psychology professor who said, most people incorrectly think, this is his part of his analogy. Most people incorrectly think their mind is like this, limited to this little 8-inch plastic bucket, and they got about 10 or 15 ping pong balls bouncing in and out of the bucket. That's the visual image he gave the students. And he said, no, those are like your thoughts, the ping pong balls. He said, no, your mind is huge. It's vast. It's like this vast Coliseum football stadium, empty, with nobody in it. And you're alone, and you got this little 8-inch ping pong ball bucket that's sitting down on the 50-yard line on the football field. But the stadium is not lit up. And so I have taken this and expanded on the analogy, and I say that's why I teach the technique of meditation the way I do. That's what it does. It lights up more of this vastness of our mind, the stadium of our mind. So
you are able to take more in from the world around you. You're able to learn faster,
yes,
connect more, feel bigger, live broader with all of those things, with meditating.
All of that. It's a practical thing. Now, yes, for those people who want to expand and experience other side and connect with loved ones and so forth, yes. Does it help? Absolutely. But it's about living here in the present. So I spend not that much time on the other side. I have fleeting experiences, and it's usually, and I'm not like saying, hey, my old friend Jesus, what about this and what about that? No, we're respectively doing our own thing. And every once in a while, there's like a connection, a quick conversation or something like that with some of my old friends, etc. But it's usually, for me now, it's work related in terms of the death and dying work and the spiritual work that I'm doing. But sometimes, it's just like random funny things. I'll tell you a funny thing that happened.
Yeah.
It's like random, like goofball stuff. I was meditating and I laid down to rest afterwards. I always lie down and rest afterwards. And anybody who's out there who meditates, doesn't matter what kind of meditation, if your meditation teacher has not told you to lie down and rest or keep your eyes closed and rest afterwards, you should do that. It'll help integrate the benefits. You should always do that. So I lie down and rest. I'm lying down resting afterwards, and a couple minutes into it, I always put my iPhone on vibrate. So, if I get a phone call, it doesn't interrupt me. Put it on vibrate. So what do I hear? I hear my iPhone goes just like this. It goes, dot, 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 dot. I do not have a notification in my iPhone that can do that. I checked afterwards just to see if my upgrade, did they put something in it? No, it went dot, 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 dot. And then about 2 seconds later, it did it again. It was as if my friends on the other side are poking me and they're going, if you didn't hear it the first time, here it is the second time. That. And it was exactly like a machine. It was perfectly timed out. It wasn't like that, like I had to figure it out. No, it was perfect. And so I've had random stuff like that happens. And people have experiences. I'm sure people in the audience have had experiences like that. Also, other times it's identifiable and linked to a certain person, right? And for example, I'll give you an example. And with some external, like, how do you know it's not just your imagination, happening too?
Well, now you read my mind, because that was going to be my question.
There you go. Right? There you go.
Yeah.
So it's that meditation thing, expanding the conscious capacity of experience. You can read people's minds too. But anyway, so not that you would want to do that regularly, because anyway. So I was lying in bed. This story, the longer version of this story is in my book. The short version is this. I'm lying in bed, alone, waking up in my apartment in Austin, Texas, a few years ago. And Saturday morning, didn't have to go anywhere, didn't have any appointments. And I'm just lying there. So I'm in that state where I'm not asleep, I'm not totally wide awake, I'm in the in-between state, okay? And then I feel this presence. I feel like if you were standing here in the room next to me, Marilyn, I have my eyes closed, I could feel you there. There's somebody there, that kind of feeling. And I opened my eyes up and there was nobody there. And as I closed my eyes again, I still felt the presence, and I felt it was a male presence. It was a man. It was a male presence. And he was talking to me from the other side. And he gave me a message to give his sister, who lives in Phoenix, Arizona, and who's a friend of mine. And all I knew was that she had a brother who died. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, I didn't know where. And he told me some personal things to tell her. But these two random things. Random things were, there's no smoking here. And what the heck is that about? And no smoking here. And he showed me, he turned on the TV screen on in my mind, went on in my mind, and I saw him and his sister laughing coming out of a San Diego nightclub. He told me it was in San Diego. It was all mental telepathy, it's just thoughts transmitting. So he told me it was in San Diego, California, near Hotel Circle off of Route 8. So it was very specific. Location, laughing, coming out at night. It was dark. The parking lot was lit up, but it was clearly at night, coming out of a nightclub. And so I gave her the personal message. And then I told her these two random things. I said, it's bizarre too. Like what, they had nothing to do with the personal message. No smoking. She said, oh, he hated cigarette smoke. Back in the 80s, before there were no smoking sections, he would go around people and piss them off and ask them to stop smoking. He would go to people in bars and ask them to stop smoking.
So that was a big message.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to ask you, I have two.
Hold on.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
And then the San Diego nightclub thing that was the last time she saw him alive. 2 weeks later, he killed himself by suicide. And he had just gotten a standing ovation singing karaoke in the nightclub. And that's what they were laughing about when they were coming out. I had no idea he lived in San Diego. I had no idea anything about that. So that's an external corroboration, right? I had no idea when he died, how he died, where he lived, whatever. But it took him 16 years to get her this message that he was okay.
So, okay. We'll have lots of questions and probably have more questions than we have time right now. So we'll have to have you come back. But first of all, so in noticing, if you're never paid attention to those things before, just really quick, is it when you get the chills when something happens and your hair stands on end, or you hear your name being called, or what are those? Is that what you would say they are?
Yes,
Okay.
I'd say you look at what is your physiologic and emotional response to what you think may
Okay.
be a message and you're not sure.
Okay.
That's what I look at. Okay.
That's perfect. And then I want your theory, if you
Yep,
have one, which I'm sure you have a theory about a lot of things, and they're
I
really
do.
cool. So, okay, number one is meditation is a way to open up to experience these things. That's number one. But number two, why do we die?
Why do we die?
Yeah.
You mean, well, physically, the
Yes.
machine
Why
is a
does
machine.
yes. Yes.
Well, the machine turns off at some point.
Okay,
You
that's
know,
a given.
okay, the cellular breakdown, this degeneration, that happens. Okay. Why do some people die tragically through an accident? Okay.
Or
Unforeseen,
suicide.
or suicide. Well, suicide, I think, is just because tragically the people are so incredibly upset at that moment. All right. And they make that decision. It's a choice at that moment. So we should never damn people, criticize people for that, because I can tell you, I know for a fact that Jehovah and Jesus and whoever else on the other side do not punish people, hold people in a negative light for having made that decision to kill themselves, because they understand how distraught the person was. And if you are a loving, compassionate person like they are, personality like they are, then you're not going to criticize somebody who is that distraught. Okay, never mind. There's no punishment on the other
Okay.
side. There's no punishment, period. There's no structure of punishment on the other side. So do you want to follow up on that?
Yeah. So, okay, so you mentioned um okay, so there's reasons to
And
die,
there's free will.
and there's free
So
will.
there's free will operating all the time. Sometimes people will choose to leave early.
When you
Maybe they're
say, wait a minute, when
fingers.
you say early, who designates when it's supposed to be?
Well, exactly. There is no earlier than the parents may like, for
Okay.
example. Let's
Okay.
just talk about parents and children,
Okay.
because that's a horrific thing. I'm a parent. I have a children. I want to die before my children do. Okay. But it doesn't always happen, as we know. And so that's a horrific thing, or any loved one when they die. It's sooner than what you want. That's what I mean when I say early.
Okay.
But the person has free will. Each individual mind has free will on this side and the other side. We have free will. We don't lose our free will. What's free will? It's choice, personal choice to make our own decisions. That's what free will is. I've seen some crazy YouTube videos of some renowned spiritual teachers conflating what they talk about free will. They say, oh, there's no free will because if I wanted to be an expert tennis player, I should be able to just think that I'm an expert tennis player, be an expert tennis player. That is not what free will is. Free will is personal choice. Can you make your own decisions? That's what free will is.
Okay. And so with as many lives as that you're aware of, and I've heard you say before that
Yes.
we are learning over there. We're not just right climb mountains and we're learning, right?
You can be.
You can be. Okay.
But it's just like this side, Marilyn. You think
Okay.
about it. So here's another. I think this is a misstatement, and I think this is promoted by certain angels and other side. Not all angels. I've talked to all the archangels. I've had a lot of conversation with Archangel Michael and a lot of other angels. And it's what I'm going to say is not true of all angels, but there's a subgroup of angels on the other side who are promoting the idea that Earth is a school, that Earth is a place where you just learn and you school. And really, when you get to our level of angelic whatever, then you've really made it. That's an importance of being important kind of thing. I call it the importance of being important. So there are minds, we'll call them, and some of them are angels. Not, and this is not all angels. So I'm not putting all angels into this bucket, okay? But there are some angels who are promoting this idea through psychics to humans on planet Earth that this is a school, okay? And this is not. Look, if you look around yourself, I say use your common sense, everybody. Look around. Do you see everybody on planet Earth looking at life on planet Earth as a place to learn lessons? No, most of the people are just like, where's the soft serve ice cream? That's what I want. You know, that's most of planet Earth. Yes, there is a subset. Maybe I'll throw a number at you. 10 to 50 million people. I'm just making this up. I don't know. 10 to 50 million people of Marilyn, you, me, Amnon, and a bunch of others who are very, very much into learning about ourselves, opening up who we are to ourselves. 10 to 50 million people out of 7.6 billion. Okay. Sounds like a big number, right? You know what percentage that is? Do the math. I've done the math.
Okay,
It's
Kelvin, but do you
0.1%.
think, okay, but since the other side is so similar to this side in some ways and this
Yeah.
side similar to, so is it possible to recognize the fact that it's all a school, and maybe some people are in one class, somebody is in another class, and maybe because they've come back before, they're in a higher class, and that the people who are not seriously learning, that per se, that we know of, when they leave, they take what they saw here as part of their lesson, so this is like a school?
You can look at that externally if
Okay.
you want to look at it that way. What I'm talking about is structural.
Okay.
I'm talking about structurally, this is not a school. You want to figuratively call it that? You want to use that figuratively speaking? Yeah, but Earth is not a structural place in the universe that's a school for souls to go learn. Okay? That's what I'm talking about.
So what do you do? Okay, so this is maybe my last question.
I've lived on other planets.
I know, and you've lived
Yeah.
all these lives that you're aware of, and you've
Yes.
gone there, and you've been here, and you're doing all this stuff. So what do you do? How do you hold all the education? How do you hold all that you've learned? And how smart, huh?
What do you mean, how do I
How
hold
do you
it?
hold it all? I mean, what do you do with everything that you've learned? Let's say you've bumped into Christ somewhere, or you've
Yeah.
seen,
Yeah.
Muhammad, or,
Yeah.
different people. And how
Right.
does that put you here? What
How
does
does it
that
put me
do
here?
for you here?
I'll distill it down to one thing. It gives me incredible compassion and understanding for the 7.6 billion people on planet Earth right now. You understand what the population was in the year 1900? 1.6 billion people. 6 billion people humans have incarnated on planet Earth in the last 119 years. So I have incredible compassion for people. I understand where people are at. I give them flexibility to be who they are. It has increased Kelvin Chin's understanding and relaxation with the free willness that exists in every consciousness. And so that's what is given me. All right. So I'm not into levels. So I'm not into schools. I'm not into grades. Oh, I'm more evolved than you. No, I am evolved. I'm involved as developed as Kelvin Chin is as compared to Kelvin Chin. That's all I can compare myself to. And my memories go back, I have 6,000 years and on planet Earth. I have memories of being on other planets. And I have 20 to 23 memories on planet Earth lifetimes. And so what it gives me compassion about myself. And I'm not as hard on myself as I have been in the past. Those of you who knew me in my 20s, I was really hard on myself. So I'm not as hard on myself as it was in my 20s and 30s. That's what it's changed for me. And it's changed my perception of an acceptance of other people and their ability to do whatever they feel like doing.
Because you know what? What is it you know?
Because I know that life is eternal, and I view life as an eternal democracy. That's the concept that we'll be talking about more in the coming years.
Okay.
And sharing from the views from our views on this side and views from the other side about life, thinking about life more as an eternal democracy. that we keep going. There's a part of Kelvin Chin that's not Kelvin Chin that continues through eternity, because the first law of thermodynamics says that energy cannot be created or destroyed. Therefore, if we're energy, there is no beginning, there is no end, there's no creation, there's no destruction. We have existed forever, maybe in a different form, maybe not as a human, okay, but existed. There's this part of me that has existed, and that individual identity of me has now taken on a human form, et cetera, et cetera. And then who knows what I'll be in the future? I don't know. Can't predict that, right? But that free will, eternal democracy idea is what's made me feel at ease with everything.
I love that. Okay, so will you come back and talk about that?
Absolutely.
And the rest, because there's so much we didn't. I feel like I've been on a race. I feel like, okay, let me ask him this, and here pops a question. I got to ask him this, but then, anyway, let's do this again. So tell everybody where they can find you, what they'll find, all that stuff.
Yeah. So probably the easiest thing is just Google my name, Kelvin Chin, and then you'll see all my different websites. You can go to one website, which is kelvinchin.org, and that connects to all my other websites. On the bottom of every page of every website is a link to the other ones. So if you go to one website, you can connect to all the other ones. Just go to the bottom of the page. You'll see hot links there.
Working with you. How does somebody work with you?
Yes. So the easiest thing is go to my contact page, and my calendar is there. Schedule a call. I do a free phone session with anybody in the world about anything. Free phone session. First phone session is always free. Okay. And then I'm speaking in Florida. I'm teaching in Florida at Spirit University in January. You can go to their website, Spirit University in Sarasota, Florida. I'm speaking at various IONS groups. Probably go to my events page on my website, my kelvinchin.org website, and everything, it's updated there. You'll see where I'm speaking around the world. I'm in Maui, be up in San Francisco, Boulder, Colorado.
Kelvin's a really good communicator, I have to tell you. And that's really a sidebar, but when you go to work with somebody, you want to know that they're a good communicator. That they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk, and you can tell that when somebody connects.
My goal is to take all of this stuff and put it into layperson's language. Take all of this esoteric stuff. It should be understandable. If the person knows what they're talking about, they should be explain it in non-gobbledygook talk.
Right. So we can do it. Absolutely.
Yes, if you really understand it.
Absolutely.
And so people should connect with me on Facebook and Instagram also.
And here's his book, which they can find where?
Amazon.
Amazon. It's well put together. It's simple. And it really helps with understanding this notion of, living. And getting past the fear, so you can
living life, and they can see excerpts of my book on my websites too.
Perfect.
Free excerpt.
Perfect. And
I do the audiobook. I do the audiobook version also. I'm the narrator.
Well, you got a great radio voice, so why not? In fact, if I ever do an audiobook, I'd want you to be me too.
There you go.
You have a picture. Okay, and here are my books. 3 are on Amazon now. 1 I'm still working on, but it's coming. In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Men, then Twins, then Millennials, and then soon Opioid Addiction. Then there'll be Black Fathers and Families that have lost a child. So anyway, with that, Kelvin, thank you so much for being here with us. I've been waiting so much for this.
Marilyn, great to be here.
Oh,
it's fun.
It's been my pleasure, and I look forward to you coming back many, 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 many live times.
Thank you.
And everybody out there, thank you for, what were you going to say, Kelvin? I don't want to interrupt.
Sounds good. Sounds great.
Perfect. And everybody out there, thanks so much for being here with us today. This is a big, a lot of stuff to talk about. And I want to hear more and more and more about it, because I want to connect with it more and more. So I know you do too. So be watching. We'll have more of this. We'll have Kelvin on again, and just reach out to him. If you have a personal question, take him up on it. He's really good like this. This information is meant to be shared. So understand that. You can't be doing this like he's doing it and not be able to share it. So with that, I love you all so very much. Have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll see you soon. Bye.